Do you believe in Bigfoot? I know, some folks hear that and think, what kind of crazy question is that? Well, others are going to be pretty clear with, how could you not believe? Well, on today's Feed Swap Saturday, I've got a show that's going to make those of y'all who think Bigfoot isn't real start questioning yourself. It's a podcast called From the Shadows, and it's one of those unique podcasts that dives deep into the unexplained. Bigfoot sightings, ghost stories, UFO encounters, and all the things that go bump in the night. It's hosted by Shane Grove, and he brings on guests from all walks of life. Hunters, law enforcement, everyday folks who share their firsthand experiences with some of the unknown. Well, what sets this show apart is its authenticity. The stories are raw, unfiltered, and they're told by the people who live them. It's not about sensationalism, it's about giving a platform to those who've encountered the unexplainable. And look, I'll tell you, if you enjoy this, please go check it out because I actually had the pleasure of joining Shane myself on the show recently to share some ghost stories and talk about old legends and folklore of the South. It's tales I usually tell in my other podcast, Southern Gothic. And it was a great conversation. I think you're going to enjoy it. So, y'all, give this episode a listen. I think you're going to be blown away. And if you are, please go follow From the Shadows today on your favorite podcasting app.
Hey, welcome everyone to the From the Shadows podcast. I'm your host, Shane Grove, and noticeably absent again is the super producer. Although I did get a text as we were going on to air, he is really ready. He's getting healthier. He's pretty close to being ready. He said he's excited to get back. So I think I saw today he was actually on social media a little bit. It was his birthday, and people were wishing him a happy birthday. So by the time this comes out, it'll be a couple weeks late, but happy birthday, super producer. So, if you didn't catch that it was his birthday, get on our social media when this comes out and wish him a belated birthday. And I won't tell anybody how much older he is than me, but it's a lot. Just know that it's a lot. And I'm only saying that because he's not on air to refute that. So I just want to remind everybody that, if you're tuning in, if you have a story or an experience you want to share with us, you can find us on Facebook on the From the Shadows podcast Facebook page or the After the Shadows forum page. Send us a message to there. You can find me on Instagram at Shane Grove Author, or find us on our From the Shadows podcast Instagram page and send us a message. And the best way is our website, the FromTheShadowsPodcast.com, and hit the contact button and send us an email. So all those ways work. And, whatever you're most comfortable with, feel free to reach out and I'll get a hold of you because we love to hear your stories. So our guest that we're going to have today, and I think everybody should kind of buckle up a little bit, put your seatbelts on if you're driving. Put your seatbelts on if you're not driving, because I think this is going to be an episode you're glad that you tuned in to listen to. And this gentleman I'm bringing on, I actually saw him sharing his story on another Facebook page, and I reached out to him, and he was gracious enough to call me and blow me away with a great conversation. And so I'm glad he has agreed to come on and join me and talk about his experience. And I think you guys will be excited for some of the input. And theories this gentleman has to put forward. So, um, JB, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Like I said, I am honored that you joined us. So I want you to. I don't want to give anything away because I know we're kind of we're under a cloak of anonymity. I can't even say it.
And anonymity.
I can't even say it. How terrible is that? Oh my gosh! It's a good thing I was an English major. Anyway, just because I can write it doesn't mean I can speak it. Um, we're under a cloak of darkness, so to speak.
There you go.
We need to keep some mystery to your identity, and so I want you to kind of introduce yourself, and let's get into where you were, what you were doing, why you were there, as best as you can tell, and let's just get into what your experience was.
Okay, so, well, like you said, my name is JB, and I served in the Army for a while. I am currently retired, not dead, retired. Um, and I got involved in some of the upper echelon of units, and one of our little training deals was me and two other guys. We went out just outside of Alamogordo, New Mexico, and if you're familiar with the area, there's a very, very large military installation out in that area. I don't want to say its name. If you know, you know. But we were testing out some of our equipment, doing some field testing for some things, and doing day trials, night trials, things like that. And at night was when we all had our experience. And as far as I know, it's everybody's first. The one, everybody that was with me, it was their first experience as well as mine. Um, and I have not had one since. And they have not had one since, as far as I am aware. But it was one guy will talk about it a little bit, and then another guy doesn't even want to mention it because he's had other paranormal things happen with him. Um, he's not real vocal about those types of experiences.
Well, and I can tell so when we first spoke uh, last week, I mean, I could tell that this experience, even as you're telling it to, we hadn't even really gotten into it, and I could hear in your voice like it really shook you, and in knowing some of your background and your experience, I'm like that really made me pause and like, man, if this gentleman experienced this and it shook him to his core this many years later, like how would the average person have an experience like this and not be just terrified to even step foot in the woods again? You know, that's what I
I,
took away. That's what I took away from it.
it it wasn't like it's not like something that you are absolutely terrified of, but you're grasping at strings to try to explain to yourself and your mind what it saw, if that makes any sense. It's just, it's one of those things where you don't have that file folder in your brain because, everybody hears, oh, they're Bigfoot. It's out here, it's out there, it's over there. But, you kind of just, you don't really think about it. And you go out and you're doing something not in any way, shape, or form associated with any of that, and you have some weird things happen, and it it manifests, and you looking at it and you just don't know how to explain it to yourself. If that I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, I think it does. I think it does. Especially, I think it'll definitely make sense to the people that are listening that have had an experience. So, so, so describe to us then, like, kind of where you guys were at, what you were doing, and how, what happened, what took place.
So we were up in elevation. Um, like I said, we were testing out some equipment, some of our gear, and we were basically there all day. We were there the whole day prior and didn't have anything weird happen. But that night we had a small fire because it was kind of cold, and where we came from was much lower in elevation. So we went up to where we were at, and it was like, man, I can't remember. It was a difference of like maybe there was 60 degrees down where we were at, and then we went up there, and we expected there to be snow on the ground. Is the difference in temperature, if you can kind of get that in your mind. But there was no snow on the ground or anything like that. So we had a little fire, and we were kind of just shooting the bull, getting ready to turn in. And my one buddy was going into his tent, and he whistled this tune. And what he whistled is something that he picked up from like his grandfather. It's not like any song that you can kind of point at. It was just like this tune of, I'm doing something. If somebody's fixing something, they'll whistle something, or if they're uh, is that am I
Yeah,
making sense with that?
yeah, yeah.
So
It's just a little personal thing that somebody would, like a noise somebody's making, and it wasn't like he, you know, I've been working on the railroad, whistling to that, what I'm saying.
right. Um so he whistled that, and then he goes in his tent, and you hear him rustling in his tent, and then he stops moving, and I hear it again. And for the first time thinking of it, we thought that he had whistled it again. But we quickly realized that he didn't when he came flying out of his tent. Like, did you guys hear that? And we're like, I thought it was you. And he goes, nope. So we quickly changed our whole posture, like somebody's out here and they shouldn't be, because it was on government land. There shouldn't be anybody out there, especially where we were at. So we started grabbing some of our gear and looking around. And when we heard it, after he said it wasn't him, you kind of like realize and you look where you heard it come from, and it's like past his tent, like 20 or 30 feet, which was right where there just happened to be a tree line. So there's this tree line back there. And once you get to that tree line, I mean, it's thick. It's thick woods. And so we start going up, going towards the sound, and we're like looking, we got our flashlights and stuff like that. And we're looking, we can't see anything, looking, going a little bit further, going a little bit further. And it was kind of weird how, and I don't remember whose light hit it first, but I'd say just on the edge of where our flashlights light could like light something up and you could tell what it was. It was like just past that, where your light's hitting something, but you can't tell if it's a raccoon or a cat kind of thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So one of us hit the light on it, and it quickly turned into all three of our lights are on this thing. And, we still at this point don't even know what it is, but it's like this big mass. It's like it's something where if you look into the woods and you see it next to a tree, it's not like it's out of place, but it's something that really shouldn't be there. So we're all looking at it and we start yelling, like, because the first thought when we heard something whistle was, okay, there's a crazy person out here and they're about to they're about to get hurt or something like that, because we were very armed. We had all kinds of stuff out there with us, but uh so we're shining our lights on this thing and we're yelling. I mean, come here, make yourself known, blah blah blah, we don't want anybody to get hurt, and doing the whole military thing, show who's bigger. And this thing kind of like slowly turned and all of our lights are on this thing's head. This thing turns its face towards us and we're immediately getting hit with like orange, like an amberish kind of eye shine from it, which was, I mean, you look at when you get like eye shine from a human, it's not orange. So that was the first sign something's kind of weird. And this thing it was crouched just a little bit, where it's like, if you put something in the microwave and you kind of lean in a little bit to like hit the numbers on the microwave, that's how like it was crouched. And it just turns away from us and quickly, but very calmly, walked off. And we're all yelling, and it was kind of just like, okay, I guess we'll shut up now. Because it just walked off and you're looking at it, you're like, that's not a person. Walked off on two legs. And when we went up there, it's nighttime, it's dark, we can't really see all that much, but we wanted to make sure that we had the right area, because as soon as the sun was going to come up, we wanted to, go back over there and check it out. So we marked the area. We used an infrared chem light, which is, it's basically a glow stick, right? Except you need night vision in order to see it. So we marked it with that, and then we marked it with, I don't know if I'm telling too much, but there's a way to take two 9-volt batteries and you basically daisy chain them together and it creates heat. So you can see that spot with thermals. So we marked it with that on a branch. It's called engineer tape, and it's called a bunch of other things like type 1 nylon kind of thing, but it's like, it's not tape, it's just a 1-inch wide nylon strand, and these batteries are taped to the nylon and you connect them together and you hang it on something. So it can either be, hey, friendlies are here, or hey, this is something important, or whatever. So we marked this location because we really couldn't see much of anything. And we went back to our campfire, which we promptly threw a bunch of wood on, because we're sitting there like, we're trying to, did you see that? And we asked each other, like, was that a bear? And we're like, no. You saw its face. It wasn't a bear. Was it this? No. Was it that? No. Was it, and was it somebody wearing like a bunch of clothes or something like that? And it didn't really fully, we didn't really fully realize what it was until that morning. By the way, we didn't frickin' sleep. We just kind of stayed up and stayed by the fire, and if somebody started to like nod their head, we'd wake them up, because nobody wanted to be the only one awake with that thing out there. And the sun comes up, and we waited till it was like the sun is up enough to where you can just start recognizing features and things like that with the amount of sunlight that's out. So we start heading back over there, and I'm a pretty strong guy, and I'm pretty fast, and I'm very, very good at well, used to be very, very good at what I did in the military, with as far as like reconnaissance, tracking, shooting, all these things. And when we saw what we saw in the daytime, made the nighttime that much more serious, if I can use that word. So the first thing we saw was the chem light that we put there, the glow stick, and it was straight up ripped in half. If you bend plastic like that, it will turn white, and it'll, show signs of like heat from bending it so much and everything like that. This was straight up ripped in half. And I know I couldn't do that. I'm a pretty strong guy. So the next thing was the two batteries that we hooked together to create a heat signature where we saw it. That was moved a little bit. It wasn't where we put it. It was still on the same branch, but it was higher up on the branch. And, as we're like looking at it, we're like, well, I can't reach that. Okay. So where we saw this thing was probably 70 to 80 feet from our fire, right? So this thing came back, and it was 70 to 80 feet away from us, and we didn't hear it come back, which is troubling because every single one of us was very, very good at what we did. That's why we were out there testing certain stuff. And it just kind of like, once you started seeing things, you're like, okay, this is getting kind of weird. And you see these two big depressions where this thing had to have been standing. And we're like, nothing that you could consider like a footprint, but depressions, and they're about 15 to 16 inches. And we were trying to figure out, how tall it was and everything like that. So we did the thing where my buddy stood where it was, and we went back to where we were when we hit it with our flashlights. And I kind of just went like sunk in my heart a little bit when I saw how short he was compared to it, while it was crouched even. So he's 6'2", and this thing crouched was easily a foot taller. And we could tell that based off of the branches that were on the tree. And he's standing there, and we're just looking, and we're looking at each other like, this can't be real. So we ended up staying out there a whole other day, and didn't have anything happen. But it was interested in what we were doing, if that makes any sense. I that's what I feel like. But I also feel like it was I'm at a loss for words even still. And this happened like 12 years ago.
I like I said, I mean, I could tell last week when we talked that even that long ago, it's still you were still having trouble thinking about. I mean, and that's 12 years is a long time. Just
Right.
to have it still be that fresh in your mind. Um, but as you were telling this, as I'm hearing the story again, another thought um, entered my mind that I don't know if we talked about. But do you? So the first time you guys, all the lights hit this creature, and you guys are, trying to get it to identify itself, and then it just kind of disappeared. How far away do you think it really went?
Well,
Because I know you
so
said you
here's the
didn't hear
thing.
sound have a leaving. Maybe it didn't go that far. I
Well,
don't know.
here's the thing about that. When it left, I mean, it wasn't like I'm going to sprint. It just walked. But even though it was walking, I'm good in the woods. Those my other two buddies are good in the woods, and there's no way we would have been able to keep up with it, given the terrain, how thick the woods were, and just the sheer speed of this thing. I mean, it was gone, and it was deliberate. Like it knew where it was going, and like you said, like very little sound. Like we were looking where it went, the direction of travel, and there's like you could barely call it a game trail where this thing walked away. And I have no idea how we didn't hear more noise or see more sign. I mean, there was not one broken branch where this thing went. There was barely foot depressions. It was something that's that tall and that wide. I mean, how much would it possibly have to weigh unless it's like a friggin' Pomeranian where 90% of its appearance is just fur?
I don't think that that's the case. For
No,
some
no, I don't
reason,
either. Like,
I don't think that's the case at all. You know, but yeah, you make a great point. A lot of people. I mean, you hear the stories of, for instance, people following track lines and then they just disappear out in the middle of nowhere, almost like it became either it got lifted up and picked up off the game trail, or it walked or off its footprint trail, or it walked backwards and then exited to make you think that it got picked up out of midair, or it all of a sudden was able to go in a different direction so light footed that it doesn't leave tracks. So what's the best explanation for that? You know, none of those are very plausible to me,
I
you
mean,
know?
so from a military standpoint, there's ways to like disguise where you've been. You know what I mean? Especially
Hmm.
with numbers and things like that. Like if I'm walking in mud and you're walking behind me and you walk in the same
Footprints.
footprints as
Yeah.
mine, and the guy behind us walks in the same footprints, you know it's more than one, but you have no idea how many. You know what I mean? And there's ways of, one of the things that we used to do is we used to carry a broom head with us. And if we walked somewhere, if we left footprints, we would get rid of some of them just with the broom head. You could still see, like, something was there, but it would disguise numbers and it would make it more difficult to detect if something was actually there. But this thing, I mean, when it turned to its right and walked off, which was our left, and we went over there the next day and we're looking, and I'm like dumbfounded at where could this thing have gone, because it's taller than the branches on this barely made game trail. And I don't remember seeing it crouch as it left, because I remember it took at least 5 steps on 2 legs, right? And it was just, it was nuts. And the only time when we smelled something, and the only reason I'm thinking of it is because somebody asked me the question on on that Facebook post, they asked, "Did you ever smell anything?" And it was weird because we did, and we all brought it up, but it was after it had gone when we smelled it, and we walked up to the area it was at, and I don't remember if it's the way the wind was blowing or anything like that, but it smelled like, and you tell me if this is in line with what people have told you, but it smelled like rotten eggs, BO, and something that had been dead for a while.
Yeah, that's a pretty common description of the smell. I mean, not that it's just everybody the worst smells that you can imagine, and you combine them into one, and
Yeah,
that's what. And
but like
and
the BO, it was so, BO doesn't quite cut it. It was like intense BO. And I don't know if it's because we're military guys and we've been out, we're used to being out for like 30 days, sometimes without a shower, and you like smell each other and you're just like, it's friggin' gross. But it was bad. Like, I mean, it was bad, but it was only for like maybe 5 seconds, right? And it almost made you like your gag reflex kind of act up. You're just sitting there like, oh, what is that? And then as soon as you made mention of it, it was gone. And we're like, you smelled that, right? And yeah, I smelled it. Did you smell it? Yeah, I smelled it. So it's like, what the heck was it?
well, that's what makes me. That's why I asked, like, how far away maybe did it even go when you guys
That's interesting.
you
So
know
when we were looking at the depressions, so there was the two depressions that were right by the tree where we initially saw it. And there was like, it almost looked as if some of the depressions were facing 180 degrees from other ones, meaning it was a coming route and a going route, something that it traveled before at least one time. But it was, I want to say there was probably, and I'm trying to go off of memory here and what we saw in the daytime, but there was probably five or so depressions that we could see. Um, and some of them were within that game trail. Like you could see one off to the left of it and one off to the right. And we're just looking at each other like, how is that? How did this thing get in there? And how did it not tear half of the forest down with it when it went through? It was just something I still can't wrap my head around it.
yeah, and that's, I mean, that's kind of like, it seems to me like I just am thinking, to me, not knowing anything really, that maybe that thing really didn't go that, it just got out far enough away that you guys thought it was gone, and that's why maybe you still smelled it somewhat, and that's why it was able maybe so easily to get back to where it was and mess with the light stick and stuff. Maybe it didn't, take off and was 300 or 400 yards away waiting for you guys to go to sleep. Maybe it was just, maybe it knew enough that it could get just far enough away from you guys that you guys weren't going to chase after it too much
Well,
farther.
since you brought that up, after I was looking back, obviously I've had a lot of time to think about that incident. Um, I get the feeling that it is, it wasn't worried about us catching it, if that makes any sense. It was almost like, you can see me, that's fine, but you're not getting anything else. You know what I mean? This thing knew that we were not going to be able to get after it for one reason or another. And, with the shape that we were all in, the equipment that we had, that's gutsy, to say the least, because we were
That's
good.
that's what you were trained to do, is to go find somebody or something, and that's what you. That's,
Yeah, specifically ones that didn't want to be found.
it's so. I mean, that has to really be. I don't know how you wrap your. And I know you probably couldn't. I mean, it sounds like you couldn't. Like, to sit there and think, like, that's what you guys are supposed to be able to do, stuff somebody or something that doesn't want to be found. And let's face it, Bigfoot is the epitome of the thing that does not want to be found. And, like, what do you do? I mean, you guys are out there. I mean, you can't. If that thing got that close to you guys, close enough that it could whistle, and for you guys to hear it really clearly, how? I mean, you guys, there's no way you guys felt comfortable of, well, let's go back to where we can, get out of where we're at here, out in the middle of nowhere. Let's just leave. It's not, that probably never crossed your mind.
No, but we were in that moment after the whistle, and we started, who's there kind of thing, and we're grabbing our stuff and we're moving to that area. We never heard noise one of this thing moving away from us and going over to that tree, but it did, because we heard it so much closer than where we saw it. And that also begs the question, was there more than one? Which is kind of creepy, because we only saw the one, we only heard the one, barely heard the one, and we only heard it really clearly when it felt like it wanted to be heard. Is the feeling that I got from the whole encounter.
Wow. Wow. That's so. So what do you guys, other than just saying, hey, did you guys see that? And everybody's staying awake. I mean, did you guys ever consider any other action that night while you're sitting there, or was it just more, let's get through the night and see what the morning brings?
It was kind of that, because A, that wasn't what we were there for, and B, it wasn't a person or a bear. So that begs the question, what was it? You know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
can't really go off track of what it is you're supposed to be doing. So we're just kind of sitting there, and it's like that was whatever that was, you know, that's what happened, and we're going to try to get a little more information when the sun starts coming up. But going after it, like, I mean, we saw the way it moved, and you know, if you ever heard anybody say pick your battles because you can't win them all, like there
Yeah,
was
it's every day at the
that's
post office. It's every day at the post office. Pick your battles.
but that's the way it was. I mean, the way for us to sit there and say, like, there's no way, like that's a whole other level of moving. And I kind of think about, maybe throughout my time in the military, maybe that's how opposing forces felt at least a couple of times, where it's like, there's no way, not doing that. But that's seriously what it was, where it's just like, all right, kind of turn around, and it's like, well, we lost that one. You know what I mean? It's like, that's over. That whole thing's over. It can have all of my nopes with how big it was and how fast it was, and how creepy it was, it's that's going to stay over there. Now, if we would have heard it again, and if it would have came with, within a reasonable distance of where we were, um, there would have been a much different response, because now we're going from, uh, getting after something. Now we're protecting ourselves. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think
exactly.
it understands the difference between the two.
That's an interesting point. Like, and we kind of touched on, like, I think you kind of brought that up, that you, in the since then, that you have that you've kind of put a lot of thought into how people experience these things, and that maybe it kind of understood more than what you was maybe possible of what you
Right.
guys were doing out there and what your capabilities were.
Right. And for something to have an understanding of that, and to still, and I'm just going to use this term very loosely, for it to understand how good we were, what we had, and to mess with us, that shows a high level of confidence in abilities. Um, but the other thing is, and I feel like we keep gravitating towards it. I feel like sightings that people have, I've since that uh, experience that we had, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, this person had an experience too, and that person had an experience too. So let me kind of look at what they noticed and what happened with them. And the more I look at these encounters, it seems as though, and I didn't say it the entire time that we talked before, and I still haven't said it, but I'm going to say it now. Bigfoot is able to tailor the encounter to the individual or individuals. Meaning, what I mean by that is, this thing is able to understand what kind of posture you're in. And by posture, I mean, like, how defensive are you? How aggressive are you? And it's able to kind of, like, people that have these up in your face encounters, they're gentle people for the most part, right? Or they don't have the capability at that time to be violent, or they bank on the fact that I'm bigger and I'm louder and I'm stronger, and I'm just going to shake this tree right next to your tent and you're going to wet yourself. So it kind of knows uh, responses that it can get to certain actions, but I feel like there's some level of intelligence there that goes beyond what we're able to think of as, like, normal thinking, normal thought process, and everything like that. It's got to have something a little extra to be able to decipher just by looking, right? Or feeling with something that we don't know how it feels it, but um
Well,
it,
like, I think what you're saying is, like, a bear. If you ran into a bear, okay, a bear's either going to attack you or run away. It's not going
right.
to, like, sit there and think about it and ponder and say, well, does he have a weapon? Is he, like, gonna come after me? Is he, is this just an accidental meeting? Is he hunting me? Bear's either just going to attack you or run away. Okay. A person is really another human being is really the only other animal that is going to have that ability of critical thought to kind of assess the situation,
Right. Problem
like you're,
solving and things
yeah,
like that.
yeah, and say, so like, what are my chances here? Or if I push the envelope, or should I just turn around and leave? Or can I scare these people really good and they're not gonna, like you said, and yeah, so I mean, I started thinking about when you said that, and I thought, that does seem to be um, a real consistent through line, is that a lot of people, unless it seems like the ones that seem to be very violent, or there is a adverse reaction from the creature, are ones when somebody has a gun and has it in a manner of which the animal or the creature thinks it might be in danger of being shot. Or maybe you're getting too close, you're in an area where maybe you're too close, you shouldn't be, and
Right. So that
they want to
was,
get you out of there.
yes, that was the other thing we talked about. The other deciding factor in how these things act or react to whatever it is we're doing, it seems to be, and I don't know this for a fact because I've never been invited for tea over at Bigfoot's house, but it's like it feels like if you're closer to the front porch, so to speak, you're going to get a different action slash reaction to you being there and you doing stuff, as opposed to if you're, along a trail or a path that they may use or something like that. It's like you're going to garner probably a more calculated, gentle response to something. Because this thing never once like screamed or yelled or anything like that, but it didn't have to. I think it knew that we understood how, just by how it moved, that okay, maybe don't mess with it, because you have those kinds of people in the military where you look at a certain individual, they've got all their gear on and they just kind of look, when you use a military term, they look squared away, and you kind of think, where his enemy, would I mess with him? And the answer is probably no. Um, that's kind of the way it felt when it just kind of like walked off, and it's taken like one step and it's already almost out of view. And you're just like, okay, I think I'm just going to leave it alone. And we're just kind of looking at each other, just dumbfounded. And that's the only word that I can use to describe the encounter. Is it takes a lot for somebody at that skill level and that aptitude with that equipment to be put in their place, if that makes sense. And just watching that thing move the way it did put us in our place, like, fairly easily. And I think it understood what it was going to take.
um, so what? Now that you had time to think about it, what do you think the encounter would have been had one of you guys pointed a weapon at it?
I think it would have probably been very similar to what happened. It's still gonna exfil the same way. It's gonna move probably the same way. Um, because once you see it turn and pick its head up, that's it. It's like, that's definitely not some weirdo out in the middle of the wilderness, and it's not a bear. So that is a stimulus in itself that you have to process before you can react to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, because you still don't, even though you know it's not a bear, and you're pretty sure it's not a human. It's still, you don't know what it is to just start shooting, right? I mean,
Right.
because you're not,
And
like you said, that's not what you're there for anyway, and you're not trying to protect yourself. Really, you're just trying to um, figure out what is out there. So yeah, yeah.
and had we
Look,
had the
if you guys didn't, so I'm just gonna, like, all the shows and stuff I hear were, hey, we need to kill one and bring it in. I'm just putting it out there. If you three were that close to one, equipped like you, I'm suspecting you guys are probably equipped. If you guys didn't do it, I'm not sure anybody's doing it. I'm just
well,
saying.
think of it this way. If you go out there with that intent and this thing has the intelligence like I feel it has, your chances of an encounter are probably slim unless you're on the front porch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But this, it's there's this thing called positive identification, right? And it only takes one bullet strike from a friendly force for that to be considered positive identification of an enemy location, right? So if we're facing the same direction and you're saying, you see the bad guy right there? And I say, no. And you shoot and I see where your round hits, that's called bullet strike. That is a form of positive identification. So now I can start shooting that spot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, that does
It
now.
would have only taken one of us to do that. And all three of us were pretty quick on the trigger and in situations previously, but that one, it gave you more. Like I said before, you don't have a file folder for that encounter in your brain, right? The military does a pretty decent job of preparing you, or your leaders, if they're a good leader, prepare you well for certain scenarios and certain situations. And if you encounter this, this is what your response needs to be. If you're doing this and this happens, you need to do that. And you train on it and you do it over and over and over and over again until it becomes muscle memory. But then you see something like that in the woods and it's like, I don't have a pre-designated response to what just happened.
I totally understand that. Yeah. Right. That is what that goes back to what I was saying. I mean, if you guys are not the ones in that situation to do something like that, who is? I mean, if, like you said, if you go out with that intent, and as you believe, the creature kind of has that feeling that, okay, you're not out here just to build a campfire and hang out. I'm not going anywhere near you, or at least I'm not going anywhere that you can know that I'm there.
Right.
You
Or
know?
I'm going to do something over here. So if you get a little too close to, and I'm going to keep using the same terminology, but if you're too close to my front porch, I'm going to go over here and make a noise to kind of draw you that way, as opposed to you getting closer to my front porch.
Um.
Diversionary tactics. It's
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. That's a good way to keep your front porch safe, or keep people away. Like,
yeah.
so when you guys get done with this and get back to, I don't know what you would call it, base civilization, whatever, did you guys talk to anybody else and describe what happened and see if anybody else that had been out there had experienced anything, or did you guys just kind of leave it alone?
So one thing I did do when we got back, and it was kind of like a group effort between us three. We kind of looked together on the computer at the man the BFRO website where there's like the sightings and everything like that, and you can report one and you can see where other people have had sightings. We went on that, and there were some that were in the area, but it was nothing to the extent of what we had. You know, some person heard a howl, another person heard like a tree knock, and I can't exactly remember the the experiences were that were reported, but it was nothing even close to what we had seen. And no, we did not report it, and no, we did not talk about it with our superiors. Um, that that night, we kind of like just throughout talking about everything until the sun came up, we were just like, yeah, this is probably one of those things you just keep to yourself, because you don't want. There's a certain level of trust that you have having that job. You know what I mean? And you don't want that trust to be overshadowed by this guy's probably insane. You see what I'm saying? Like you don't.
I do, and to me, okay, look, and so, and that's something that the people who have these experiences keep fighting is you guys know you weren't insane. I mean, you guys are highly trained individuals, okay? So to me, if your superiors would have to know. I mean, they've trusted you how many different times to do how many different things. And so now all of a sudden, one time you come back and say, hey, look, there was something out there that, that we couldn't explain and it didn't seem right. Well, now all of a sudden you're crazy. You know what I'm saying? That makes, if people are going to question you guys and what you saw and your sanity, then how on earth does just the average everyday person ever going to feel comfortable with coming forward with what they saw? Because people are definitely going to say they're crazy. So that's
Right.
the thing. That's why I love the fact that even though it's 12 years later, have decided to come on and just say, look, I got to share this because people shouldn't be thought of as crazy for this.
So
I don't think you're crazy. I don't think anybody listening to this story is thinking, "Oh man, that guy's just making that up." That's just nuts. Because
well, how many? Maybe not so much nowadays, especially with how much information has become public. But how back in the day, let's just say late 80s, early 90s, right?
mhm.
How many UFOs would a pilot have to report before they were grounded and lost their wings?
I mean, I've heard stories where they just told them, "Look, don't bother. It's too much paperwork." And it was just common knowledge for pilots and um, just like commercial pilots, even just they were just like, we're just not even going to talk about it. I mean, yeah, we all saw something, but nobody wants it reported,
Right.
and so so how many people then? So and that's so the place where you guys went had to be a place where there were excursions like yours probably took place on a on a pretty regular basis, at least. Like you guys weren't the first people out in that area, I'm guessing.
No, but I can tell you just by looking at the specific spot that we were at, like we chose the spot, right?
Yeah.
So we had this briefing about what we were going to be doing, and they said, "What looks good to you?" And you know, we looked there and saw it was at one time, probably not too long after I was born, but at one time it was a logging road.
Okay.
And so there was, again, like very, very old evidence of, logging and things like that in that area, but nothing recent. There wasn't anything that I could look at where it was like, hey, somebody's been here recently or within the last couple of months, even. So somebody being there on a regular basis, I would say no. And the odds that somebody set up right where we set up is very slim to none, because we're looking at a gigantic map, and we had like a kind of like a basic idea of where we wanted to go and where, because there was certain, uh, I don't want to say too much. There was certain requirements that had to be met so that we could meet the
Necessary testing.
standards.
Necessary
Right.
testing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I get
And we felt that area would have done it perfectly, and it did. Um, we did accomplish what we needed to, and everything worked, and all the stuff was good to go. And but yeah, it was. I don't think anybody had been there probably about a year or more prior to us being in that specific spot.
well, so there's still a really good chance then that whatever that creature was, Bigfoot, it had it or some members of its. Because I mean, it's impossible to have just one out there all by himself. I mean, if there's got to be
Well,
two,
that's
what I'm
my
saying?
thought process. Is there had to have been, for that one to be that, and again, using this term loosely, for that one to be that brazen, it had to have like support. You know what I mean? Hey,
Yeah,
if something goes bad, I need you to come out of the other tree line and scream so these guys all wet their pants and we can run off into the woods together, or something like, you know what I mean? Like, there had to be
yeah.
something. There had to be something else out there. And
And so what
because
I so,
based on how little we were able to detect that one with how big it was,
yeah.
it's like, it's insane.
So what I was, what I'm trying to get at though is that they probably like those things have probably been there. They've probably been there for a long time. So even if somebody hadn't been there in a year, there's a good chance that they had seen humans and maybe
Right.
interacted with humans.
Well, why'd the
And
logging stop?
well,
Still trees there.
there you go.
I mean,
It wouldn't be the first logging operation that stopped because of
really.
equipment malfunction. Yeah.
So
Uh,
I'm in kind of like a unique position where, you've heard, I don't even want to try to pick a number, thousands of reports, and probably read and,
Yeah.
listened to thousands more.
Yeah.
So I'm at a disadvantage because I have not poured over this, because I can't do it without thinking about that incident, if that makes sense.
Of
So
course. Yeah.
I haven't really. Do I want to know what it was? Absolutely. Do I want to know how many of them there were? Sure. If I was in my prime, would I want to try to race it just to see how good I am? Absolutely. But I haven't poured over these instances and these reports or anything like that. And that this had to have been, by chance, because that Facebook page that you saw me on, I was a member of it for like 3 days.
I
And
was a member of it for like 5 minutes. I literally had been invited to join it, And that post was like the second post I saw. Like I
I
literally.
saw it was just something that came across my social media feed where this lady was, I mean, this old little old lady came forward about her story, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, well, tuck your cojones away there, lady. I guess I'll tell my story, because it's like, it is there is a certain level of uh I don't want to say like bravery or courage or anything, but there is a certain level of testicular fortitude that it takes to come out with this, because you just know there's going to be people that are going to try to pick your story apart. They're going to try and, say, well, what about this? What about that? And they're also, the other people are just going to call you crazy. So I know what we encountered, and I know that there's not a normal explanation for it. But the lady came out, and I'm like reading her story, and it was pretty cool. And I was just thinking, if Granny May can come out and tell her story, then I could probably tell mine. And I'm like beating myself up for like 3 days being a part of this group, seeing other people talk about their stuff. And you have, with every group, you have some people where you look at what they said and you're just like, I don't know if I can believe that, or they straight out come with I believe. And I still have the skeptical mindset of what it was, because we didn't see it super clearly, right? Just enough to kind of get a basic shape of it and its eyes. And I'm always going to be skeptical about it. That could not have been what I saw, because there, like I said, you just don't have a file folder in your brain for that. I mean, you see it on TV, you see it in movies and things like that, but that's not real life. And then all of a sudden, something similar to what you've been seeing in movies and stuff, it's like, how did that get there? And you still try to write it off almost, but you can't, because it's not a bear. And for the listeners, I've been in the woods my whole life. I used to hunt in the southern tier when I was a little kid, and I would hunt regularly. Not that this incident stopped it, but basically up until that incident, I don't hunt anymore. I'd like to, but I live in a place where that's not really possible. Um, which, that's another story. But um, I just, I'm always going to have that skeptical mindset towards it, because I don't understand what happened, and my buddies don't understand what happened. Just how it moved and how quick it was, how big it was. It's just, it doesn't make sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense. I mean, and that's also a common, like you said, you haven't, I mean, listened to as many stories as I've heard. And I mean, I haven't listened to as many stories as a lot of other people heard have heard of, as far as researchers and stuff. But that's just the common, like, when you've had a real experience and you can't wrap your head around it. That's just a common thing, because it's, like you said, it's not supposed to exist. You're not supposed to be
Right.
out there with something that's supposed to be a fairy tale, or you know,
Well,
we don't have one in the zoo, so it certainly can't be real.
if you can still basically put like a bear even though a bear is extremely powerful and they're extremely large, and in moments they can be extremely fast, it's still based in what is like the physical world. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Whereas this, its abilities and the way it did things. I mean, I was with some people that could be considered professional and Olympic athletes with how they were physicality wise. This thing is on a whole other level. So to try to wrap your head around that in a physics based world, how is that possible? I mean, how can something that big move that quickly without making that much noise and without affecting the environment around it like it should have? Um, that's to me, that's just right there. How can somebody go out there and expect to shoot one of these things when that's what you're up against? I mean, people go hunting for bear all the time and come back empty-handed. And people go fishing all the time, and we have, I got the Husker Du 6,000 rod and reel with the brand new flippy flap bass lure, and they come back and they didn't catch a darn thing. So it's like, how do you expect to go out into the wilderness in this thing's domain and come back with any form of physical evidence other than, hey, we saw a footprint and we took a picture of it and we made a cast. We got this weird hair sample, and look, there's some weird poop. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way you can go out into this thing's playground and come out with some sort of physical evidence unless it wants you to. And I don't think we're there yet. Because what was that? What's that show with the big dude, Bobo?
Oh yeah,
Is that
Expedition
Finding
Bigfoot.
Bigfoot or Expedition Bigfoot?
Finding Bigfoot. Expedition Bigfoot's the one that's it's Finding Bigfoot.
I mean, I'm watching these people go out, and first of all, they make more noise moving through brush and everything than all get out. And they hear a noise over here, and then every single person goes over there and checks out that noise. Well, nobody has really gone with the thought process of, it's making a noise over here. Maybe I should keep going the direction that I'm going. Not that I would want to have a close-up encounter with one of these things and see it where it has to feel like it's got to protect itself or its family or its friends or whatever. Because just based off of what I saw, how this thing can move and everything like that, you can have, you know, super duper extendo mags on your weapon and all the fancy hoo-ha lights and optics and things like that. And I don't think it's going to make much of a difference.
I just can't get over the fact though that you're questioning whether Bobo was as well trained as you were
Well, no, that's
in the
just my
art of.
point.
I know.
Like what would happen?
How could
What
he?
would
How
happen?
could he do if you guys couldn't detect it was a sneak? How could he?
Well, not only that, but with especially the amount of noise that they all make, right?
Yeah.
I watched like half an episode. I was like, this is stupid. I couldn't watch it anymore. I like that they go out and they have like the town hall meeting and they're like, who's had an experience, and they go to those locations and things like that. But you can't hope with that much noise, that much, you know. I mean, you can't. You're just not going to be successful. And
Yeah,
the
you
other
don't go
point
hunting
I
for
was
deer.
making,
You don't go hunting for deer or anything else in that manner. And those animals aren't nearly as smart as we're trying to as we believe Bigfoot is. So why could you? Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Something that has an obvious uh, thought process where it can, you know, dictate its next move. But that brings up one of the other questions when we were talking earlier. We're like, I have no way of knowing how many human encounters this thing has had.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it knew how to uh, act or react to a certain thing. Like, what if we put a weapon up on it? Like, what is that? What what does it do? You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know what this thing knew, and that to me was troubling because in a lot of tactical situations that me and my buddies have been in, it's almost like you're able to predict because you've studied. You know what I mean? You have the kind of weaponry they've got, the kind of tactics they're going to follow, this, that, and the terrain, the area, blah blah blah. So you can kind of predict, hey, if we come over here, this is what they're going to do, and we're going to do this to counter that, and blah blah blah. Well, nobody knows what this thing's going to do unless it comes on your back porch and you chill with it on the weekends, and you know you learn some of its behavior. Like, there's some fantastical stories that I've seen where this the whole community knows that, hey, that guy, he talks to him, or he knows where they're at, or they come through his property or whatever. And it's like, even he doesn't know how they're going to react to certain things. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
how can you expect to go out there with a hunting rifle, right? With just a scope on it and come back with a Bigfoot body? First of all, I wouldn't recommend that. And second of all, you're we're past the technology point with this thing, because we had a lot we had a lot of technology out there, and somehow, some way, it was able to negate hundreds of thousands of technology. I mean, has anybody ever, maybe has anybody ever gotten a picture on a trail cam that you can be like, yep, that's a Bigfoot? Or is it, it's
I have not personally seen one. I know people that have claimed to have gotten them, but they do not like to come forward with. They certainly don't. It seems to me like the people with the fake ones want to put them out there, and the people with legitimate real ones are the ones that don't want to put them out there. And I
right?
don't know. I don't know. I mean, I do understand. I, so if you had one in your backyard, okay, if you knew you had some in the woods, you like a family, a pod, or whatever they want to call them, of Bigfoot out on your property in your back 50 acres. Would you really want to show like the video that you caught them walking through? No, because
No,
there's
because
everybody and
this
their brother would be there. Yeah.
this something I've noticed about this community, and I'm not dogging anybody at all, but something I've noticed about this community where it's like somebody has a sighting somewhere, and it's like, dude, that's where we have to go. We've got to go there, and we got to check it out. That person doesn't want you on their property, bud. Like, they just don't. I mean, what would have happened if finding Bigfoot would have found one? Everybody and their mother would have gone to that spot. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You'd have all these people beating on trees, hooting, hollering in the woods at 2 o'clock in the morning, and people that live in that area are just like, this needs to stop. So I mean, look at what happened with Skinwalker Ranch. You know, Bigelow didn't even want it anymore because of how difficult it was to keep people out, because somebody always wanted to go there and try to check it out. And he couldn't wrap his head around figuring everything out there. And I don't know who's got it now, but
The guy that has a TV show. That's on
there's a guy that has a TV show on Skinwalker Ranch.
yeah, there is. It's on for its second or third year. Yeah. It's called The Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch. It's actually pretty good.
Well, I'll eat my hat because. But no, I mean,
it seems to me that Bigelow got all the information he wanted to get out of it, and then decided, okay, we kind of
or it was
figured out
just
what we needed.
a pit. You know, I've dumped this much money in here. What do I have to show for it? Probably nothing. Bigelow's a millionaire, probably a billionaire. You know, I'm sure he's very calculated with what he spends and what yield he gets out of things.
Well, and what you're just, and kind of what we're talking about, that's close to, not too far away from here, and is Minerva, Ohio. And one of a really famous case in the late 70s, early 80s was the Minerva monster, and which Seth Breedlove has done a really good documentary on. But that happened. It made national news, and there were film crews, news crews, radio, all kinds of newspaper people lining the road to these people's house, and then people would just show up, like with guns, like they were going to go onto the property and they were going to find this monster, and it became a sideshow, and kind of almost kind of jokey, and it wasn't until however many years later, they some people finally got in to really investigate it, and there actually is stuff reputed to be going on now. But at the time, it just turned into 40 some years ago, turned into a circus, and the people wished they had never said anything.
Right. Well, that's exactly my point.
Yeah.
And I feel like these creatures know, like, hey, somebody takes a legit video of us, that we're going to have to leave because it's game over at that point. It's the same thing that happened over there is going to happen here. So we gotta leave. And there's one dude that I listen to as far as Bigfoot goes, and it's the Bob Gimlin guy on YouTube.
Okay.
And I just listened to the way he thinks about things and how he rationalizes certain things. It's very interesting to me. He's very, very well spoken, and he doesn't just do Bigfoot. Like he did the British were in Africa, and the workers in Africa were getting just destroyed by these two lions, or these three lions. It was two or three, I can't remember. But he basically did a whole story on that and how hard it was for the British military to go there and kill three lions, right? Or two lions. I can't remember what it was, but these things would come into their little military post and take people. Even if they like defended it, they would put spikes and stuff like that. And these lions would come in and still take workers and drag them off. And you could hear them dragging them off and chewing on them and stuff like that, just out of eyesight. So you take something like that, something we know in the physical world, people kill lions all the time, whether it's legal or not. I've heard stories of people killing Bigfoot, but I've not seen one single shred of physical evidence. Unless I'm wrong. I could be wrong. because I haven't dug so deep
Yeah,
in.
I have not even really heard a good story about. I've heard stories of people taking shots, but I've never really even I've never heard anybody claim that they actually killed one. So, but there's, I'm sure I gotta believe that there has been throughout the years, somebody's got a shot on one and probably killed one because it seems to me they've been around for a long time. So I can't
Oh,
believe
there's no
that.
doubt. I mean,
Yeah.
there's cave drawings of these things,
Yeah.
right? It where you look at it and you're like, that can literally be nothing else but that, right? It's
That is
sitting
correct.
next to
Yeah.
the deer, it's sitting next to the iguana, it's sitting next to the fish, and then there's that. Like that's what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Like,
Whether it was a Native American or, some, another indigenous person. I mean, it's not like they saw the fish, saw the buffalo, saw the bird, and then we're like, you know what? I'm going to make something up. Let's make up this Bigfoot looking creature. It's not, that's not how it works.
and we'll pass it down for centuries verbally through our traditions, just so 400 500 years down the road,
We're going to pull fast one on
yeah, and we're gonna let them know that. Gotcha.
them.
No, I don't think that's the case at all. But I mean, and those people lived in the wilderness, right? So the wilderness was their domain as well. So
Yeah,
it makes sense that they're able to at least encounter it and see what it looks like. But they didn't have night vision. They didn't have thermal imagery. They didn't have all this stuff. They didn't have satellites. They had their eyeballs, which, I mean, unless you eat a lot of carrots, you really can't see that great at night without some sort of light source. So how did they draw it? Did they see it in the daytime, or did they have a real close encounter at night? That begs the question.
exactly. Yeah, that's a great question. You almost think they had to have daytime encounters at some point.
Right. And
So,
it and throughout
or
throughout all the time, it
they lived
learned.
beside them. You know,
Right.
almost. Yeah.
And I think there are actually Native American stories that talk about, hey, we used to coexist with these things, and then we had to, go to their cave because they started stealing our children or our women or whatever. We had to go to their cave and stand there with bow and arrow and basically throw fire and stuff into the cave and kill them all. Like, is that, if there's a story like that out there, how can we refute that? That's people, it's like prior to the invention of lying. So how do you how do you how do you look at something like that that's been passed down through tradition and in cultures and say, yeah, this thing doesn't exist?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I totally. Well, and here's the thing: is so because you've had that experience, so there's no, and you're still trying to, and you're still trying to rationalize all these other things and um, kind of make a box to fit it all in, and you're not just guessing or hoping. You actually saw it with your own eyes.
Right.
So
And I'm trying to I'm trying to come to terms with, a couple of things. Like, I, didn't hear it, right? There would be no way for me to chase this thing down. Not through that, and not with how fast it was. And now I'm too old, right? I'm not gonna I'm not gonna use Sam Bolt after this thing. It's not gonna happen. Um, but that it just it was impressive. And I got the impression that it knew it would be impressive to us. You know, like you might get a glimpse, but you're not gonna touch me. You're not gonna get close enough to grab me or shoot me or whatever.
Well, I would certainly, you know, I would certainly hope that somebody hears this and has had an experience in that same, you know, kind of figures out like maybe where you guys were and had either they were part of a logging crew that got, you know, driven out, or they, you know, some other some other guys in the military that maybe had an experience and they're like, man, I that sounds like what happened to me, or sounds like the same place where I was, and
And I'm
reach.
sorry that the location is very vague,
Oh, that's okay.
and you know it's
It's like you said though, if you know, you know. You know,
yeah.
so the only people that would have experiences out there would be people similar to your situation, or if somebody had been out there logging, probably. So
And you know, I'm sure somebody maybe at some point had been camping, not right where we were, but there's areas not far from there where there's campsites and things like that. So I'm sure, you know, Joe and Sandy were eating sandwiches one night and, you know, had something weird happen. It just, there's no way not. It could have been something that they brushed off, because what if we just told our buddy, you know, hey, don't stop messing with us. We know that was you that whistled. You know what I mean?
yeah,
That would
yeah,
have brought,
exactly.
I
That'd
would
have been
have
it.
nothing to talk about, and I wouldn't, you know what I mean? I would have,
Mhm.
there would be nothing. Maybe. Who knows what it would have done after that if it didn't get our attention.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people that I've talked to that when they start adding stuff up over the years, then they go, you know, once they have like an experience, and then they're like, so now I wonder if 10 years ago when this happened, if that's what I was, you know, I was experiencing it at that level. And then 5 years ago when that happened, if I was experiencing at a different level, you know what I'm saying? So they start you know, they have an experience that has everything in it. And then they start the parts of it, they had experienced parts of it prior, but just thought, oh, it was something else, or it was just their imagination. But then they're like, man, maybe I was experiencing a Bigfoot, but not the full blown sighting. You know, we heard it, or we smelled it, or it messed around with something. You know, so those experiences are really common, and a lot of people, you know, start putting two and two together and figure out that, hey, I've been experiencing stuff all along. I just hadn't seen it with my own two eyes.
Well, that's kind of what I said to you when we were talking before, where it's like, you know, I after this and I was thinking about it, and you know, it took me a long time to you know look into, you know, any type of similar sightings or reports or anything like that after this one happened. Um, you know, I'd still go out into the woods and out into the field and everything like that, do training and stuff out there. But it's like I've had some weird. I after this one, you kind of look at it and you're like, huh. I wonder if that time when I was in the woods and I heard this noise or I felt this thump or whatever, I wonder if that could have been something else as opposed to just shrugging it off and carrying on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it does kind of make you look at, I mean, because if anybody who's been in like real deep woods has had some form of weird thing happen or another, you know, they might not have been able to put their finger on it or point at one root cause, right? But something weird, something possibly unexplainable. So what is the catalyst for, digging into it a little bit? Like what does it take? Does it take like a sighting like mine, or does it take a more inquisitive mind?
Yeah, I maybe there's a lot of people that don't want to know. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to know if because it might ruin the experience for them if they think there's something like that out there. I
Right. Well,
firmly
not
believe
only
that.
that, but there's
Firmly
like
believe that.
it's some people see a snake and they're like, nope, and they just walk in the opposite direction. You know what I mean? It could be something similar to that.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like you
me.
hear a
What are you
noise and you're
talking?
just like,
What
yeah, I'm
are
not
you
going
talking
over
about? What are you talking about? That's me. If I see a snake,
there.
I'm out of here. What are you talking about? Yeah, I totally understand that. Some people, the fear of the unknown is way too great, and maybe you can't blame them. You can't blame them. Not everybody's equipped to mentally, physically, or whatever to discover something that um, they weren't expecting. Some people just want to be as is and go through life. You
No,
know what I'm
I can't
saying?
say that I blame them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, JB, I am glad that you were a member of that page for a couple days and I was on it for 5 minutes because I'm glad to 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 have been able to reach out to you and have you come on and share because I mean, like I said, this we had a great discussion before and I think this was another great discussion and I hope everybody that tunes in enjoys the your particular insight and some of the questions and points that you've made for sure. And hopefully somebody out there with similar experiences and similar circumstances will reach out so that, I think it would be wild to get somebody to reach out from the same area and say, yeah, man, this is what happened to me.
That
I
would
think that,
be that'd be pretty nuts. But if I've made somebody feel more comfortable in sharing an experience that happened to them that maybe they've been thinking about for a while, or maybe they've been beating themselves up lately about it, where, you know, I mean, I don't have anything to gain by coming out. You know what I mean? I don't there is
no, certainly
no
not.
there's no reward I can get for coming forward other than I can finally get it off of my chest because it's just been there for it's been there for a while and I haven't come out with it. But if maybe somebody's got it just kind of weighing on their mind, um and they needed that little extra whatever to come forward and talk about it, I thought when I came out I was fully ready for all the uh all the bad. You know what I mean? Like I was fully ready for people to go, "You're nuts, you're crazy, you're stupid, you're a liar, blah blah blah." I was ready for it because I just knew in my mind that it would happen, and I was completely blown away with the support and just I never actually thought people would start asking me questions about it. What did you think of this? And what did you think of that? And did you see this? Or did you smell that? Or whatever. And it's just like, I, I don't even know how to respond because I wasn't even thinking about any of the positive that could have possibly resulted in me coming out with the story. But it, I'm still kind of humbled by it, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate you contacting me, and I appreciate you letting me be on your show and everything like that. And um,
Oh no, hey, I tell you what, I'm humbled to have you on and have you share it. I mean, it's just your military service and protecting people like us that get, so we can sit back here and have podcasts and do stuff like this and enjoy the freedom to do it. I mean, we all owe you, a debt of gratitude and just to listen to what you have to say. I mean, at the very least, everybody can do that. So
Well, as long as it was done while there were supportive people back home, then it was worth it. So
well,
I appreciate that as well.
Yeah, so I once again I just want to thank you for coming on, and I think people are going to enjoy what you had to say. So I'm looking forward to hearing the response.
I am too. I'm gonna start following the podcast and everything like that, because I don't. Well, I sit at home and watch like a YouTube video every now and then, sure, but I'm not like, I haven't ever really investigated things. I've never felt the need or the want to go back out in the woods with that thought in mind, where I want to find one of these, but maybe one day, I don't know.
Well, I said it to you before. If anybody's starting a team together that wants to go out and really find one, I think JB's your man. So I think he's not that I want to be your agent and get a cut of it, but I think you're the first guy. You're the first guy I'm building the team around. Just say. Just say. Just say.
I am retired. I'm not dead. I'm retired.
Even better. Well, hey, thanks, JB, and I'm looking, like I said, I'm looking forward to see if we get some response from this and find somebody that had a similar experience in that area. So I think that would be pretty cool.
I think it would too. And like I said, if it helps anybody else come out with their story, then that's all the reason I need to come out and say what I did.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.